I'm not suggesting Queen Camilla lacks authority, but that tiara isn't hers. It rightfully belongs to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, for the Christmas gala at Buckingham,
The order was only a few pages long, but the moment Princess Anne pressed her pen against the final signature line, Camilla's ceremonial life inside the monarchy was effectively erased. No warning was issued to the public. No comforting explanation softened the blow. Within minutes, palace officials were instructed to remove the Queen Consort from every upcoming procession, investiture, state reception, and formal royal ceremony. And the decision came from the one woman Camilla never believed would act against her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne read the final paragraph twice. Her hand stopped above the paper because she understood the wound her signature would create. The emergency decree was a formal order used when senior royals believed the dignity or stability of the crown faced immediate risk. It did not end Camilla's marriage, remove her title, or erase her private place beside Charles. It did something more exact. It barred her from representing the monarchy during public rituals where royal authority was displayed. Camilla received the message while preparing for a ceremonial engagement. She dismissed her dresser, removed the brooch pinned to her coat, and placed it inside its case. Anger came first. Then humiliation. State openings, military commemorations, investitures, formal banquets, and national services had all been taken from her in a single command. Those duties had helped prove that she belonged beside the king, and now their removal exposed how fragile that acceptance had always been. Anne remained alone after signing, staring at the ink as though it carried every warning ignored. According to a documented palace account, she had invoked a confidential emergency protocol, allowing a senior working royal to suspend ceremonial participation when the crown's standing was judged to be in danger. This was not revenge. In her mind, it was containment. Charles opened the sealed copy in silence. He saw Anne's signature, read the order, and closed the file without canceling it. Instead, the monarch asked how quickly the official program could be revised. That question changed everything. His refusal to intervene told the palace that the decree could move forward and would soon become public. Camilla demanded to know who had authorized such an act. The answer came quietly. Anne had not signed alone. A second name appeared beneath hers, turning a bitter family conflict into a royal judgment Camilla could no longer dismiss. But before Camilla could confront the person behind that second signature, she had to face the devastating truth that this decree was not born in a single morning. It had been building inside her own family for years. Behind the decree stood three people bound together by duty, yet divided by fear. Anne believed she was protecting the institution her mother had entrusted to them. Charles faced the possibility that defending his wife could weaken his crown. Camilla, suddenly excluded from the ceremonies that had legitimized her public position, saw something even more personal being taken away. The acceptance she had spent decades trying to secure. Anne had always treated royal service as a promise, not a privilege. The crown, the institution representing the monarch, the royal household, and the duties carried out in the sovereign's name, could survive personal pain, but not public distrust. She had spent years proving that discipline mattered more than comfort, and now she believed protecting that principle required hurting people she loved. Charles stood at the window with the decree in his hand, while Camilla waited behind him. She asked whether he intended to defend her. He did not answer. The king simply lowered the pages and stared ahead, and his silence felt more brutal than any accusation. To her, the removed ceremonies were not empty traditions. They were the public proof that she had finally been accepted as Queen Consort, the title given to the reigning monarch's wife without granting her the king's constitutional powers. Camilla stepped closer and asked again. This time, he turned, but he still avoided her eyes. She understood that he feared defending her too forcefully would make the crown appear controlled by marriage rather than duty. That fear cut deeply because she had spent decades surviving rejection, only to discover that acceptance could disappear the moment it threatened his reign. Anne remembered a private conversation with Elizabeth, preserved in a documented family account. Her mother had warned that affection must never be allowed to weaken the monarchy's judgment. The memory brought sadness, yet it also hardened her. She had not signed because she hated Camilla. She had signed because she believed hesitation would cost the institution more than conflict. Then Camilla looked again at the final page. Beneath Anne's name was William's signature. The prince, as heir to the throne, represented the monarchy's future, and his support meant the suspension was no longer one woman's challenge. It was an alliance between the family's most experienced working royal and the man who would one day wear the crown. Charles finally spoke. Anne and William had not acted without evidence, he admitted. A confidential record existed, documenting one incident inside a sacred royal ceremony, an exchange so serious that even he could no longer dismiss it as personal tension. That hidden incident had taken place weeks earlier, when a single exchange between Camilla and Anne crossed a line no apology could repair. The crisis began during a private rehearsal for the annual Order of the Garter procession at Windsor. What should have been a carefully controlled ceremonial preparation became the moment everyone later identified as the point of no return. With only senior royals and a handful of officials present, Camilla challenged Anne's place in the procession, demanded that the formation be altered, and invoked Charles's authority as though the king's name could end every objection. Camilla expected the matter to be settled quickly. The Order of the Garter procession is a formal royal ceremony in which senior members walk according to rank, duty, and established tradition. Their positions are not simple preferences. They show the public who carries responsibility, who represents continuity, and who stands closest to the authority of the crown. Anne had been given a prominent place because of decades of service and her military roles. The Queen Consort believed her own position beside the monarch should place her ahead. Camilla turned toward an equerry and ordered him to move Anne behind her. An equerry is a royal officer who assists senior members of the family during official duties. Before he could answer, she added that the princess must adjust to the new reign. Anne heard every word. She stepped forward, not with anger, but with a calm that made the room feel even colder. Anne told her that ceremonial service was not a personal reward. Camilla replied that the monarchy now followed the king's household and that old arrangements could not control the future. Charles stood only a few steps away. He lowered his gaze and said nothing. His silence wounded Anne because it allowed the challenge to stand, while it encouraged his wife to believe his name could override tradition without question. A palace secretary recorded the exchange in an official rehearsal memorandum, a written account used to preserve decisions and disputes during royal planning. According to that documented record, Camilla had attempted to change an established ceremonial order without formal authority. The secretary also attached earlier notes showing similar requests involving processions, guest access, and presentation order. William later read the memorandum in private. The prince expected one argument. Instead, he found a pattern. Camilla's staff had repeatedly tried to expand her influence over events that carried public meaning, and he understood why Anne no longer viewed the Windsor confrontation as a misunderstanding. Anne kept her composure until the rehearsal ended. As she left, she told William that the next conversation could not happen in front of courtiers, secretaries, or anyone capable of softening the truth. The future king agreed. When Anne finally entered Camilla's private sitting room, there were no aides to interrupt them, and neither woman intended to retreat. The door closed, leaving Anne and Camilla alone with years of resentment neither had ever spoken aloud. Camilla remained standing beside the fireplace, refusing to offer her a seat. Anne placed the Windsor memorandum on the table between them and asked one direct question. Had she truly begun to believe that marriage to the king gave her authority over every royal who had served the crown before her. Camilla pushed the document aside. The memorandum was the official written record of the Windsor rehearsal, preserving what had been said, who had challenged the established order, and why palace officials considered the exchange serious. Anne had requested this private meeting as a final chance for her to accept limits voluntarily. No decree had yet been signed. No public humiliation had been ordered. There was still a narrow path away from disaster. Camilla accused Anne of never accepting her. She said every warning, every correction, and every cold silence had carried the same message. No matter what title she held, the family would always see her as an outsider. Anne did not raise her voice. She replied that personal acceptance meant nothing when the credibility of the crown was being placed at risk. Anne reminded her that ceremonial influence was not constitutional power. Camilla's reach had grown through household planning, direct access to Charles, and recommendations passed through loyal staff. None of that gave her written authority to rearrange senior royals, alter established processions, or treat the king's affection as permission. Camilla's anger finally broke. She admitted that she had endured decades of rejection, public blame, and private suspicion, only to be treated as temporary once again. Her pain was real, and Anne felt it. For a moment, the princess softened. Then she said suffering did not create entitlement, and old wounds could not be allowed to become new power. Anne revealed that William had reviewed every documented incident. According to their recorded private conversation, the prince was prepared to support formal restrictions unless Camilla stepped away from selected ceremonies voluntarily. The future king did not see the matter as revenge. He saw it as protection for the monarchy he would one day inherit. Camilla rejected the compromise. She insisted that withdrawing would look like an admission of guilt, and warned that Charles would never allow his sister and son to humiliate his wife. Anne picked up the memorandum and moved toward the door. Before leaving, she gave one final answer. The king had already read everything. Camilla said nothing. For the first time, she understood that his silence might not be weakness. It might have been consent. Yet the true power behind the coming decree would not be revealed through Charles's words, but through the authority he quietly chose not to use. Charles possessed the power to stop the crisis with one instruction. He could have rejected Anne's emergency protocol, ordered William to withdraw his support, and restored Camilla's place before the first revised program was printed. Instead, the king sat with the decree unsigned before him, and made a choice that would define the entire confrontation. He would neither endorse it publicly nor prevent it privately. Charles remained the reigning monarch, which meant one direct order from him could have halted every department involved. A countermand was a formal instruction canceling an earlier decision, and no such command arrived. That silence gave the decree its force. Ceremonial offices, household planners, and senior aides treated Anne and William's directive as authorized because the sovereign had chosen not to block it. Charles sat alone with his private secretary and turned his wedding ring slowly against his finger. He asked whether Camilla could keep her charitable work while stepping away from crown ceremonies. Those ceremonies were official public duties, carried out in the monarch's name, and removing her from them would separate private loyalty from public authority. His question exposed the truth before he admitted it. He was already planning around the suspension. The secretary asked whether the king wanted to speak to his wife before the schedules were changed. Charles closed his eyes. Every earlier conversation, he said, had ended with duty becoming personal and concern being heard as betrayal. He feared another confrontation, but his delay was no longer neutral. Each hour without intervention allowed the order to become harder to reverse. A handwritten note beneath the Windsor memorandum carried even greater weight. According to the documented file, Charles had written only one sentence: "The dignity of the institution must take precedence." The words were brief, but they gave Anne the moral foundation she needed. He had not publicly approved her action, yet he had privately accepted the reason behind it. Anne learned that Charles would not add his signature. He would simply permit the decree to stand. The decision wounded her because it left her carrying the blame, but it also confirmed that even the monarch believed Camilla had crossed a boundary. William understood the same thing. The future king saw silence not as weakness now, but as the final permission required. The ceremonial office began revising programs immediately. Names disappeared from investitures, military services, state receptions, and national events. Then, one change struck harder than all the others. At the next national service, Camilla's place beside Charles was reassigned to Catherine. When the revised program reached Camilla's desk, the absence of her name was painful, but the name written in her place made the loss unbearable. Camilla read the revised service program without speaking. Her name had vanished from the arrival procession, the front row seating plan, and the formal departure beside Charles. In the space where she had expected to stand, palace officials had inserted Catherine. For the first time since becoming Queen Consort, Camilla was not merely being asked to remain unseen. She was watching another woman assume the ceremonial position she believed proved she belonged. Camilla folded the program, then opened it again as though the words might somehow change. They did not. Her investitures, military commemorations, state banquets, national services, diplomatic receptions, and formal carriage processions had all been removed. An investiture is a ceremony where the monarch or another senior royal formally presents honors. Those appearances had given her a visible place within the crown, and losing them meant losing the public proof of authority she had fought years to secure. Camilla asked her aide whether Catherine had requested the position beside Charles. The answer came quickly. She had not. The princess had simply been assigned the duty after the revised order was approved. That truth unsettled the Queen Consort even more. Catherine had not taken anything from her. The institution had moved forward without needing permission from either woman. Charles entered, but Camilla refused to look at him. She asked whether he had chosen Catherine. The king answered that the institution had chosen continuity. His words struck both of them because they exposed the growing distance between marriage and monarchy. He still loved his wife, yet he had allowed the crown to place another royal beside him in public. Camilla learned that several members of her household were also being reassigned. A royal household is the team of aides and officials who manage a senior royal's duties, schedules, and public work. Because ceremonial planning no longer belonged to her office, she would lose influence over programs, guest access, and official arrangements. The suspension was no longer symbolic. It was reshaping the power around her. A handwritten message from Anne arrived before evening. According to a documented palace account, the princess offered one path toward dignity: accept the suspension publicly, avoid blaming Charles, and meet privately before the national service. Camilla read the message twice. This time, anger did not come first. Fear did. Camilla dismissed her advisors despite their objections and agreed to meet Anne alone. She was no longer preparing to defend her authority. She was preparing to ask whether anything of her royal life could still be saved. Their second private meeting would not be a battle over rank. It would become a reckoning between two women who finally understood the cost of forcing Charles to choose. Camilla entered without jewelry, staff, or the ceremonial confidence she had carried into their first confrontation. Anne was waiting beside a small table, but no decree lay between them this time. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Camilla admitted that she had mistaken visibility for security, believing that every place in a procession and every seat beside Charles protected her from becoming an outsider again. Camilla had come without advisors because this meeting could not be hidden behind procedure. No aides, secretaries, or palace officials were present to soften difficult words or turn emotion into formal language. Anne had no intention of reversing the emergency decree immediately. The purpose was simpler and more painful: to discover whether the Queen Consort would resist publicly or accept that her royal role had changed. Camilla apologized for the Windsor rehearsal. She admitted that ordering Anne to move had not come from confidence, but fear. She had believed the family still saw her as temporary, unworthy, and tolerated only because Charles loved her. Every ceremony had felt like proof that she finally belonged, and losing those duties had awakened the same rejection she thought she had escaped. Anne listened without interrupting. Then she acknowledged that the family's history had caused real wounds and that Camilla had endured years of judgment few people could fully understand. But the princess refused to confuse pain with authority. She told her that the king's affection could not become ceremonial power, and that suffering did not give anyone the right to bend the crown around personal fear. Camilla lowered her voice and asked whether the suspension meant permanent exile. Anne answered through a recorded private account that the decree was not designed to erase her forever. A future review remained possible if she respected household boundaries, served without demanding precedence, and rebuilt trust through quiet duty rather than public position. The path was narrow, but it existed. Camilla read the private acceptance statement slowly. The document confirmed that she accepted responsibility for the disruption and would not blame Charles, William, or Anne in public. She signed. In return, the princess removed the harsher language prepared for the palace announcement, replacing punishment with restraint. Camilla asked one final question before leaving. Who would stand beside Charles at the national service? Anne looked at her and answered with 2 words: the future. The next morning, that image appeared before the world, and one empty space in the royal procession told the entire story. Crowds gathered outside St. Paul's Cathedral, expecting the familiar royal formation. But the first visible sign of change arrived before any announcement was read. Charles stepped from the state car alone. Moments later, Catherine joined William and Anne in the formal procession, while Camilla remained absent. The empty place beside the king became the image repeated across television screens, newspaper offices, and palace gates throughout the country. Charles paused at the cathedral entrance and turned instinctively toward the place where his wife would normally have stood. The movement lasted only a moment, but Anne saw it. She kept walking, because stopping would have exposed the pain behind the decision. The formal procession was the ordered entrance of senior royals during a major national service, and every position carried public meaning. That morning, the formation told Britain that duty had been placed above marriage. The palace released a carefully worded statement, confirming that Camilla had stepped back from ceremonial duties, while continuing selected charitable work and private family responsibilities. Inside the household, reactions divided sharply. Some courtiers feared the announcement exposed a dangerous family fracture. Others believed the boundary had prevented a deeper constitutional struggle over who could influence public royal authority. Camilla watched the service privately. When the broadcast showed Charles entering alone, she became tearful but did not reach for the telephone. She had promised Anne that she would not challenge the arrangement publicly, and keeping that promise now cost more than signing any document. The Queen Consort understood that one angry call could turn private sorrow into national crisis. The following morning, one newspaper captured the entire moment. Its front page showed the king's solitary arrival beneath the headline, "The Crown Draws a Line." The phrase spread quickly, because it reduced a complicated family conflict to one brutal truth. The monarchy had chosen a boundary, and Camilla stood on the other side of it. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd watched the announcement on mobile phones. One woman lowered a Union flag and said, "No one can be larger than the duty." Broadcasters repeated the sentence throughout the day. Public anger did not erupt, as Camilla's advisors had feared. Instead, the country waited to see whether she would accept the loss with dignity or reopen the wound. By nightfall, Camilla understood that she could not reclaim the role she had lost, but she could still decide what kind of woman the monarchy would remember. The emergency decree did not end a marriage, remove a title, or drive Camilla from royal life. It did something more precise and, in many ways, more painful. It separated personal love from public authority. Anne's signature declared that affection for the king could not grant unlimited power within the crown. Camilla's acceptance proved that losing ceremonial status did not have to mean losing every fragment of dignity. Camilla permanently withdrew from the monarchy's central ceremonial program, though selected charitable causes, family appearances, and her private position beside Charles remained intact. The ceremonial program was the official schedule of public rituals performed in the sovereign's name, including national services, investitures, state banquets, and formal processions. Losing that role mattered, because those appearances had once proved her public acceptance. Now they confirmed the boundary she could no longer cross. Charles sat beside her after the national service and took her hand. The king admitted that he should have established limits long before silence forced Anne and William to act for him. Camilla listened without pulling away. She answered that she had spent too long trying to prove she belonged by standing in the most visible place, only to discover that titles, processions, and closeness to the throne could never guarantee belonging. Anne returned to her office with the unused draft of the harsher palace statement. According to a documented account, she read it once before destroying it. The princess had never wanted public humiliation. Her emergency decree was meant to protect the crown from personal influence, not to erase Camilla from the family or destroy her marriage. William carried the signed order into the sovereign's confidential archive. The archive was the protected collection where the monarchy stored sensitive records never intended for ordinary public release. The prince placed the decree inside as a warning for the future. Ceremonial privilege could survive only while it served the institution rather than the individual who held it. Catherine assumed a greater ceremonial presence, while William's authority as heir became clearer. Anne remained the household's trusted guardian of discipline. Camilla lost the public role she had fought to secure, and Charles finally faced the cost of avoiding conflict until others were forced to choose for him. Duty won, but no one left unwounded. The monarchy emerged colder, yet steadier, because personal insecurity had been stopped from becoming royal power. Every person involved finally accepted the same truth. The crown could survive only when no one, not even the king's wife, stood above its boundaries. And with Anne's decree sealed inside the royal archive, the matter was finished. Camilla remained part of the family, but the ceremonies of the crown would never again belong to her. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.